You're settling, and it's costing you the life that you say you want. The worst part is that you probably don't even realize that you are. Maybe you shrink around men that you want to love you, or you say yes when you mean no. Maybe you wait, hope, or doubt and call it patience or surrender. You might be saying you're holding the vision, but really you're holding back. Let's get honest. Hello, my loves. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Lorena. I'm a somatic self-concept and identity coach, and I support women in bridging the gap between who they currently are or how they perceive themselves and who they desire to be or become, so that you can break even the most persistent patterns in your life, relationships, circumstances, feelings, and step into the version of yourself and reality that you desire and deserve. Speaking of deserving something, in this video we're gonna break down how you're settling without even knowing it, what the hidden consequences are of you keeping yourself small, why you settle, so we're gonna dive into the fears underneath, and how to stop and no longer normalize less than you really desire. So sometimes we know that we're settling. Sometimes we know that we're staying in a relationship that we've actually outgrown, or that we're in a job that we don't like. But very often settling isn't actually that obvious and a lot more subtle. So you're often settling without even realizing that you are. And what that can lead you is, number one, an internal conflict, because you feel like you're battling against yourself. But number two, and in a more obvious way, it leads to you feeling blocked in creating the life that you want. So you feel blocked with your desires, let's say the love you want, or the expansion you want, the lifestyle you want. You feel blocked with it and you don't know why. Because you're not realizing that you're blocking yourself by settling for less. There are 3 signs that show that you are settling. Number one, you see it in your self-concept and in what you believe is possible for you. So if you're really honest with yourself, if you think about something that you deeply, deeply want and that hasn't come to fruition yet, you say you want that, but deep down, do you really believe that you can have it? Maybe you feel like your vision is too big or too impossible, or that your desires aren't actually meant for you. And so you start creating from that belief that you can't have more, that you can only have what you presently have, or maybe a little more, but not the big vision that you're actually desiring. Number two, you can see it in the decisions you make. Every time you choose something or you say yes to something that you don't really want, you say no to what you do want. This is why boundaries are important. Listen, my clients know how much boundary work goes into self-concept and manifestation work, because every time you say no to what's not actually enough for you, you're giving a vote to what you actually do want. Whereas when you say, not necessarily through language, but through the decisions you're making, okay, better than nothing, or better to be nice, or I'll upset this person and they might leave. Now you're keeping what you do want away and you're settling. Number 3, you can see it in your behavior. Now that can look like self-abandonment and tolerating less than what you want. This often shows up in relationships where you might want love so deeply, so badly, that you maybe accept the bare minimum because you don't know that what you do want actually exists. It can look like you not taking up space. So keeping yourself small, not allowing yourself to be seen. Maybe you've got a message to share, but you're scared of how it's going to be received, or you think it's not good enough. It can also look like you comparing yourself to others, feeling like you're always competing with someone, which when you do that, it will never be enough, because there's always someone who's better than you, more successful than you, prettier than you. So where in your life are you still settling, even if it maybe looks good enough on the surface? Let me know in the comments if there's anything that comes up for you. And settling like this has huge consequences. And you may be able to observe these in your own life. Oh, we've got a cat visitor. She does not settle, by the way. We can learn a lot from cats. They behave like the queens they are. So what are the consequences of settling? Maybe you keep ending up in mediocre relationships, or with partners who can't fully meet you, or who are maybe emotionally unavailable. I just created a video on that a few weeks back, which I will link somewhere above my head or in the description box below. Or maybe it's not your relationships, maybe your work sucks your freaking soul. although you're spending 40 hours a week doing it. Maybe your friendships are lackluster, or you're always the one giving a listening ear, whereas if you have something you need space held for, your friend disappears. And of course, you could just be dissatisfied, feeling jealous of what other people have whilst you feel blocked in your own life. And the most obvious consequence of settling is you not getting what you want. That's the definition of settling, right? Getting less than what you want. And being okay with that even if you're not okay with it. And that also means less than you deserve, because maybe you deserve more. Maybe we need to work on that. I'll dive into that later. Now, we know this, but I also want you to think about not just the current moment and what you're currently feeling and experiencing. I also want you to think about the consequences of that this has into the future. Where does this leave you, not just now, but in 2 years and in 5 years and in 10 years? What will your life look like if you keep settling? This is really what we need to think about, because as far as we know, and at least in this human body, we only get this one life. So why not do with it what you actually want to do? Why not follow the desires that you have? Because why do you think you have them, if not to make them come true? A few years ago, one of my clients said something that really landed with me, because she said that what finally made her take the leap and decide to work with me and join Recreate Yourself was that she'd realized how much time she had wasted and that she just no longer wanted to do that. She started understanding how precious her time was. And sometimes we need to get to that point. Sometimes we need to settle for long enough that the pain of settling gets so big that we're like, no more, what the hell am I doing here? This is something that you often see happen in relationships. Because in a relationship, you're spending a lot of time with the person you choose to be with. And if you're settling here, it's actually quite painful. Every day, every moment, you're reminded that you're not actually living the life that you want to live. It might even be just good enough. And I'm not even just talking about abusive relationships, which is a whole different story. If you're in a really toxic dynamic, it's even more important to get out of that. But even if it's a relationship that looks good on the surface, that's just good enough, subconsciously, you'll always have this nagging feeling of, but I want more. And that will compound over time until you look back and regret. Wanting more does not make you selfish. It makes you honest. So why does this even happen? Because I can tell you, stop settling. And we will also get to how to break that cycle. But first we need to understand why you settle. Because it's not because you're incapable. It's not because you don't have enough willpower or you're not strong enough. Let's break down the fears that come with actually going for what you want. Let's dive into why you settle, even when you know you shouldn't. Firstly, you might have a fear of being too much or asking for too much. This is something that often prevents us from going for what we want. When you fear that you're asking for too much, you're not going to ask for more, even if you want more. That guilt, that shame for what you desire can really hold you back. And there's self-judgment here. Because we are taught in society, in most cultures, to be humble, to be modest. That's what we should strive for. That's what makes you a good person. When someone compliments you, you're almost expected to deflect it. When someone apologizes to you, you're almost expected to say, it's fine, it's not a big deal, even if it was a really big deal. So this is something that has been programmed into you through your surroundings, through collective messages. See how that's not your fault? Secondly, you also might feel that you don't deserve what you want. Because we're not talking about baby desires here, right? We're talking about the epic love story, where your friends might say, your standards are just too high. That person that you want just doesn't exist. We're talking about really enjoying the work that you do, and being excited to get up every morning to do it, where you might be told, work just sucks, you just have to accept this. Or maybe you're a Capricorn like me and you love work and you need to learn not to work that much. So when you really lean into the bigness of your desire, you can feel like, maybe I'm not enough for this. Maybe this other person can have it or make it happen, but not me. There's even a discomfort here with receiving it. So we don't let ourselves have it. Because what if the real life scenario proves to us that we're not good enough for it? that we can't actually hold it, that we don't have the capacity for it. That is something we can work on. We can work on expanding your capacity to receive. That's a lot of the work I do with my clients in Recreate Yourself as well, because you need to shift into the identity that can hold the bigness of your desires. And that includes expanding your capacity to receive and expanding the capacity you have in your nervous system. So you can actually check out Recreate Yourself in the description box below. I've got it linked there. And if you want a starting point when it comes to just feeling more deserving of what you want, then I've also linked a free masterclass replay in the description box below for you, because I have a whole masterclass on feeling worthy, feeling deserving of the very things that you desire. Number 3, you might feel guilty to experience what you want because others have less. And that's what you think about. First of all, just like there's always going to be someone who has more than you, who is prettier than you, who's more successful than you, who seems to have a better relationship than you, there's also always going to be someone who has less. And secondly, you're actually not benefiting them by keeping yourself small, by settling. You're not going to allow them to rise up too if you're keeping yourself small. How's that supposed to work? You're not going to show them what's possible. If I said I'm not following my desire and I let that hold me back from showing up here, possibly none of my clients would have made their desires reality. And if you're even getting one message out of this video or any of my videos, you wouldn't have gotten that message, that empowerment, that inspiration, that boost, or that catalyst. Why? Because I wouldn't have been here. Because I wouldn't have been able to show my clients what's possible. And I wouldn't have been there to show them how. Number 4, you have a fear of being seen. Because that's scary. I still find it scary. Often when we have a fear of being seen, it's because you probably allowed yourself to be seen in the past, likely in your childhood, because as children, we're a lot more free. We're a lot more carefree and excited, and we just do what we feel like doing, and we don't overthink it because we don't have that ego identity yet that creates these limitations that makes us overthink. And so maybe you let yourself be seen in the past and you got hurt. Maybe you were laughed at or shamed or rejected. It's a very real fear, but the alternative is keeping yourself small. And either way, whether you are seen in your fullness and you're rejected or abandoned for it, or whether you don't even allow yourself to be seen in the first place, you're going to feel unseen. So why not try? Because maybe you won't be abandoned. Maybe you'll be celebrated. And number 5, you have a fear of failure. Now, this one was coming all along because this is what we fear. What if it doesn't work out? What if I try and it doesn't work out? What if I try and I waste my time? What if I go for this big desire and I choose not to settle? I choose to not be in a mediocre relationship and then it never works out. I never meet anybody else. I never get what I want. That's a very real fear, almost as real as the fear of success that you might not even be aware that you're having. I have a video on this, which I'll also link in the description box below. But here's how we stop settling. First of all, you don't need to do more. You need to be more. Your self-concept, the self-perception you have, the identity you live from, who you think you are, what you believe you're capable of, is really the culprit behind everything. Because what you may notice is that the patterns that you have playing out in your life are actually playing out in pretty much every area. And if your self-concept is the culprit, we need to change your self-concept. This also means we actually need to process and heal and integrate all the fears and emotions that I spoke about earlier, and maybe some other ones that you have that I've not even covered. We need to work through that. We need to work through the jealousy and the guilt and the shame and the fear of abandonment and rejection. All of that is part of self-concept work. All that is work that we actually do in Recreate Yourself. Because it's not as simple as just saying, I'll stop doing that. I'll stop settling. You will notice it will pull you or try to pull you right back to what you're used to because it feels safe. It's also not as simple as just assuming you are the person who's now capable of doing that. You need to not just assume, you need to actually become the person who doesn't settle. So that settling is no longer even an option. And what's also really, really important in order to stop settling, and that's maybe the first step out of all of them, is to get really, really honest about what it even is that you want. Because often we're ashamed of our desires, and you need to become unashamed. We're often jealous of others because we don't think we can have it, or we feel shame for wanting what we want. One of my clients, she came to me when she had this big desire for a romantic relationship, but her beliefs in that even being a possibility, and I mean the bigness of that desire, not just any relationship, that was on the floor. For weeks when she was working with me, she kept saying how impossible it felt for her, and she was really frustrated, because she had tried a lot already to change her beliefs. She had done all the hypnosis tracks and all of the work, and she'd worked with other coaches. She'd done so much to try and fix it. Not about fixing, but that's another story. But she'd been trying to shift her beliefs for actual years. And the result was that she would only ever meet unavailable men. She would experience a pattern of someone being interested in her only to pull back or meet someone else or change their mind. And with that came also that she felt really jealous of other people who had what she wanted. She would feel this tension and contraction in her body when she saw couples who were happy and in love. But now, not only does she celebrate when she sees a couple in love, and it's not something she needs to make herself do, it's just natural to her because of who she now is. She now also feels that the love that she wants, the epic love story she wants, is not just possible, it's inevitable. She has no fear of that not happening, and so she has no inclination to settle. So with that, you really have to hold your standards. That's again easier said than done. But it's really not just about deciding. Most women try to fix the outcome instead of shifting the identity behind it. They try to make themselves act differently, but they still get triggered all the time. Their nervous system doesn't actually have the capacity to be present with that decision. And so they fall back into self-abandonment and people-pleasing again and again. The truth is that you can't receive what you don't allow yourself to claim. And you can't claim what you don't believe you deserve. That's why we need to change your self-concept. So you can become someone who does not settle. Not because you force it, but because it's simply no longer who you are. If you like this video, I'm going to link my self-worth meditation somewhere beside my head. I don't know which side yet. It's going to support you in really leaning into your own worthiness without bypassing. And then I'll see you again in next week's video.